Welcome to the When They Forget podcast, a call-in show where listeners share their Alzheimer's stories. If you have a story about navigating care home decisions, choosing a caregiver, talking to doctor about medicines, setting up power of attorney, a funny shopping story, we would love for you to call in and share your Alzheimer's story with us. We need to introduce ourselves. Hello!
See? That's how it's gonna start.
Yeah.
So we're sisters.
We are. My name's Jennifer.
My name's Debbie. As Mom likes to call us, Jennifer and Jebby.
Yeah.
Well, that's what she used to call us. I used to do the same thing with my kids, going through their names because I would forget who I was yelling at.
Yeah.
But
I just call Chewy the dog Corey, and sometimes I call Corey my son Chewy.
Yeah, I just start shouting all the names, and
Yep.
eventually it lands on one of them.
You get the right one.
I do, yeah. So you're Jennifer and I'm Jebby.
Jebby. And our mom has Alzheimer's from a traumatic brain injury.
Yes, she does. And it's very aggressive.
Yeah.
And it has taken her from us very quickly.
Yeah.
One of the good things about it is it has made us, you and I, a lot closer. And I don't know about you, but it makes me feel closer to her. Because I think that if she was just healthy and out there living her life, I wouldn't be as focused on spending time with her and communicating with her and visiting with her and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely put that into perspective for me. I think I probably took her for granted a lot more than I do now. I definitely don't take any of our calls or visits or anything for granted.
Yeah. Yeah, before all this happened, she was very eccentric and independent, and she liked to do her own thing. And so, I didn't see her very often when my kids were little. Once we moved away from Oregon, she came out to visit us like once a year. And my experiences with her were a lot where she came in like a big whirlwind and told me all the things I should do different with my life and then left. And so, yeah, I didn't talk to her a lot. I didn't call her a lot. I didn't reach out a lot because I knew that she was always busy volunteering somewhere or working because she loved seeing people and being around people. So most of her jobs were very customer facing, and she was a bit of an oddball.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So at first, when all of this started to happen, and her behavior just seemed like a more extreme version of how she always acted. She was more eccentric or more odd and said, weirder things, but I just shrugged it off to thinking like, oh, well, that's who she is.
Oh, I know. That was when she would come over and remember how her outfits, she used to when she was, when we were young, well, maybe not younger, but young adults, her outfits were just spot on. Like everything. She just would dress up and she would look so nice all the time. And then over time, we had the mismatched socks and we would have, 3 shirts on and, a weird pair of pants and some leggings stuck out the bottom. And, one of her pant legs would be tucked into her socks and she would be wearing, she never wore 2 different shoes, thank God. But, it was just things with her. She went from, being this very put together dresser to being, somebody who almost looked homeless at times.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I noticed, a change in her, because she lived in Arizona when a lot of this started to happen, and she would come over and sit with Tommy and take care of Tommy, and eventually we didn't let her go out with him. She couldn't drive with him, that sort of thing, because it was just, we realized it was becoming unsafe. But I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I just thought, Mom's getting old.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't be driving. I didn't put together that, something was going on in her brain. I just thought, like you, it was just an amplified version of what we always grew up with.
Yeah.
That was really kind of rough to see that happen to her. And then, it was just all of a sudden we got told, she was in the hospital, and to get that call from the social worker that your mom can't go home and live by herself anymore. You have to make arrangements for her. We will not release her.
Yeah.
And to realize that, there was something really serious going on.
Yeah.
That was really rough. And then I have that picture of her car. It's actually that's a good story.
That is a good one.
The picture of her car at urgent care. Thank God she'd driven herself to urgent care because she knew something was wrong. And when I went to get her car, it was like sideways in the parking space. It wasn't even really in a parking space. It was half out in the parking lot, and that was horrible.
Yeah.
Funny now.
Back
then it was a little shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, the things I remember, because I lived in Oregon when she was down in Arizona in the same town as you, and she would lose her car at the mall because she worked at the Gap because she loves being around people. And so it was just like a fill-in job that she used to go do, and she would lose her car, park it somewhere in the parking lot, go in and work, and then forget where it was, and have to have security drive her around the whole mall and for her to find her vehicle. Like,
there was a couple times that she called the police department because she thought somebody had stolen her car.
Oh, and then the time when she couldn't remember how to get home, and she kept turning the same corner, and she took all of these rights, and a cop finally pulled her over because he thought she was drunk, but she didn't remember where she lived.
Yes. Yeah. And then there was the time she took a wrong turn, and she was on the right road, but she wound up probably 20 miles in the wrong direction, and some nice man, she got to the end of the road, and some nice man figured out that she had gone the wrong way, and he let her follow him all the way back.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, that was a Good Samaritan. She wound up in Far East Mesa. And she kept on trying to find, because where we lived, there were those blinking red electric tower spires on the top of the mountains. And so that's what guided her home. And for whatever reason, she couldn't find him. I don't know if it was cloudy or foggy or whatever. And so she had no point of reference. And so she took a right instead of a left. And she just kept going and going and going and going. And she wound up in Far East Mesa. Yeah. And she wound at the end of the road. I mean, it was literally the end of the road. And some nice man figured out that she was in the wrong place and led her home. Yeah. Yeah. Until she could see the electric, I don't even know what they're called, but those electric towers on the top of South Mountain.
Yeah, like the radio towers. We have those here.
Yeah.
You can see them from everywhere. Yeah. I wonder what families do when they notice it right away because they spend so much time around their loved one, like married couples. Because we didn't spend a lot of time around mom. We didn't spend a lot of time around her, and even then we just thought she was getting a little more odd or, a little more mellow and eccentric in her older age. But I wonder what people do, like because mom, when she was diagnosed, was too far into it to understand what was going on and what was happening. And so I don't know, it's been so long since she's talked about it, but for years she even denied she had Alzheimer's because she didn't understand it. She was so far gone. I wonder what families do when you get it so early that they can process it. Like they can process, I have Alzheimer's. I don't know.
I almost think that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
You almost wish that you're like mom, or you don't get the diagnosis until you're so far gone you have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she could have made better arrangements for herself.
Yeah. And
she could have made better end-of-life arrangements than she did.
Yeah, we could have stepped in too and probably done the power of attorney so much earlier. and helped her
Yeah.
get a better plan.
Well, the thing for me is I was there when she got her traumatic brain injury. You were talking about her being so independent. And sometimes I feel it's not sometimes, it's all the time. I feel incredibly guilty because that day, how she got her first really bad traumatic brain injury is we had just moved to Oregon. You were at college.
Mm-hmm.
And our grandfather clock was broken. It got broken in the move, and she was taking it to a clock repair person. And I was being an obnoxious teenager. I was 16, and so I didn't want to help. And so she got it out of the back of the car. And I can't tell you that she would actually have let me help her because she was so independent. But she was lifting it out, and she tripped over the back of her shoes, and she went headfirst into the pavement. And she ended up spending a week in the hospital with her concussion and TBI and all of that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a horrible place for me to know I know she had other concussions, but I think that was the big kahuna. That was the one that set most of this off because it was such a traumatic brain injury for her.
Yeah.
And she's had other problems since then. But being there, being the person that was, there and knowing, and again, knowing I could have helped her, but at the same time, would she have let me help her?
Yeah.
I don't know. She was incredibly independent. She and Darlene re-roofed our house.
Yeah.
In Montana. That woman didn't let anybody do anything for her.
Yeah.
So if I had hopped out of the car, would she have? But I don't know.
Yeah, and there's no way to know that when that happened, because that was 30 years ago?
1987. Yeah.
So 30 years ago, that and that's what's insane is that we can say, like, we know that happened. And that event now, because she has fallen other times, she's had other concussions, and then in 2009 she had the bleeding on her brain, and so she had brain surgery. And that's what, like, all of those things cumulatively together caused her to have Alzheimer's from a traumatic brain injury. But what's nuts is that one event, there was no way to know that that's what was going to happen.
Exactly. There's just, we didn't know anything about concussions or anything like that back then.
Yeah.
And nobody would have done anything differently anyway.
Yeah.
They monitored her, they made sure she was safe, and, would there have been anything they could have done for her back then? I don't know. Maybe she could have, watched things as, she got older and, seen the signs. But, all of this whole TBI and Alzheimer's information has only been recent.
Yeah.
That it's all been put together.
Yeah.
And it's because of the NFL.
Well,
and, it's crazy that our little mom, who's like 80 pounds sopping wet, it's the same time of Alzheimer's as these big NFL football players get.
Yep.
That part's rough. But, there's a lot of other things that I've read. Like, she had really low vitamin D levels, and vitamin D has been linked. Chronic low vitamin D has been linked to Alzheimer's. So maybe there was other things, when you put it together cumulatively, you put it all together and that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's hard to say for sure.
She also didn't ever eat well, especially once she got older. She was very, very sparse with the food and protein and just not really eating very much. So
yeah, I don't know about you, but every time she would come over to my house, if I would cook for her, she would eat until she made herself sick because she just never ate when she was on her own.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common for a lot of older individuals who are alone and live alone. They don't want to cook for one.
Yeah.
And they don't want to eat, and but I would always feed her as good as I could. And then when she would babysit for us, we'd always send her home with the leftover pizza or leftovers of anything that we had.
Yeah.
So that she was eating. But you're right. She didn't eat very well either. And she didn't, monitor her hormones as she got older, like they say we should. And there was a lot of things. And again, I mean, a lot of it is information that's only coming out now. She couldn't have known this stuff because nobody knew this stuff. And it's really heart-wrenching to see her now. But, I when she used to come and visit me when my kids were younger, she used to drive me crazy. And crazy. We finally got to the point where she would come and see me, and we would actually have to take a trip because I could not handle her having in my house. I mean, she would rearrange my kitchen cabinets how she thought they should be. Mm-hmm. And, I had to make the house, the kids always knew I had to make the house Nana clean.
Yeah.
Because if my house was dirty, she was just going to pick me apart. But now, we go and see her and we just sit with her and we just talk. Yeah. And there's none of that driving each other crazy anymore. And so that part has made me feel closer to her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still the obnoxious child that drives her insane, but it's just nice to just sit and have time with her.
Yeah.
And it's so much different than when she used to come and visit.
Yeah.
I used to stress out so much about her coming to visit and stay with me. Oh.
Yeah.
But
me too.
Now it's just time. It's just quality time. And it's quality time that you and I will remember.
Yeah.
She won't remember it. She doesn't remember it, but we do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. My sister and I have been talking about doing this podcast for a while, probably more than a while. And right now we are in 2 separate states, and we are both under stay-at-home orders during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this podcast is a bit of our COVID-19 project. So we decided to just do this and put this out there and see what happened. And we really, really hope that you enjoy listening, and we hope that you'll call in or email in and send us your Alzheimer's stories. You can record it on your phone or computer and email us the recording file at whentheyforgetpodcast@gmail.com. And we also have a phone number. That number is 850-254-9595. You can leave us a voicemail and we'll play that on our show. And if you don't want to record something or leave us a voicemail, you can email us your story and we will read it on the show. Of course, if you want to be anonymous, you don't have to send us your name. You don't have to leave your name on the voicemail. And if you want to change the names of your loved ones, and we still want you to reach out and share your stories. I think a lot of the time when you're a family member of someone with Alzheimer's and you learn the news and you figure things out and you go through all of these hurdles and there's new declines and new things that happen and you just feel very alone. There's a lot of resources out there, and we want this podcast to be one of those resources where you can hear other people's stories and feel a sense of not being alone. You can feel that there are other people out there going through the same thing or similar things, similar feelings as you. We are stronger together. Thanks for listening to the When They Forget podcast. If you don't mind, please go out onto iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with others. When they forget, we remember, so keep calling in and sharing your stories.